McGillick. I work for North Coast TAFE on the sunny North Coast of New South Wales. This is chapter 2 in a journey for us in augmented reality. Well actually I'll go on to what augmented reality is first. It's probably a good idea. So augmented reality is a digital layer between the user and the real world. And what we use to view that layer is a mobile device at the moment. Okay. We have a couple of ways of triggering information. They can be someone scanning an image. They can be someone walking within a certain location. And it can be a combination of those two, otherwise referred to as geomesh. We'll go on to that a little bit later. The first project that we did last year was focusing on kitchen safety. So what we did was we took photos of equipment throughout the kitchen and we uploaded those to the platform, and that enabled students to go around with their phone and scan an oven, scan a sink, scan a fire hydrant, etc. and up would come some information relevant to that piece of equipment. Predominantly on the focus of safety. It was great, it was really good, it was quite effective. We highlighted some weaknesses in our Wi-Fi network at the time. When you get 10 students or more on the network at once, it's a bit of a challenge, but we've rectified that. The main problem with this was if you wanted to duplicate that resource and make it for another kitchen, you have to do the whole process again. So it was, it was great for this one kitchen, but how do you replicate that? How do you disperse that to a large audience? So that took us on to this project. We looked at two areas of study. One area was telecommunications. So there was electrotechnology and networking, IT networking involved there, and community pharmacy. So one unit from there was test blood glucose levels. This first area, electricians, it's a commercial course, electricians would come and study with us. They would do some gap training to be competent to assist with the rollout of the NBN network, the last stage. So within the premises, creating networks within the home or the business. They needed a certificate to do this. They need to have skills in wiring, and they need to have skills in TCP, IP protocol to create the networks. The other cohort, the community pharmacy students, test blood glucose levels. These are distant students. They are currently receiving work booklets. So what we did was we AR enabled the front of that booklet. So they'd receive the booklet in the mail, old school. They'd get their phone out, they'd view the front of it, and that would take them to the resources, which I'm going to go on to now. That's, as I just mentioned, that was the front of the blood glucose. That's all right. That was the front of the blood glucose workbook that the students would scan. Up here we had fridge magnets. So we give these to we're giving these to the telecommunications students. It's magnetic, so it sticks on their toolbox, and that's the trigger. So they go over to that, they scan it, and then they have access to the resources that we've created. The resources are some HTML5 websites which have videos loaded onto them, and also panorama of the work environment, which is the key point of today's presentation, was finding a workaround that earlier dilemma of how do you replicate a kitchen environment for another kitchen location. So these are the resources we created. We got some. We made some web pages, so the student would, if they were doing the cabling, the electrotechnology side of it, they would click on the relevant area, installing a 611 socket. They click on that, then they go to a wiring diagram, they click on the relevant switch within that diagram, they could watch a video on how to install it. Bit of a refresher. A lot of electricians already knew that, but it was an important refresher just to get them up to levels. The next part was the networking side of it. This was all to do with finding your modem router's IP address, how to navigate the interface for the router. So these all contain videos, setting up network security. And over here, a series of, just for the blood glucose resource, just a simple web page. The user would just click on those for a video. Really straightforward. This is the panorama that we created. It's a 2x1 image so it's twice as long as it is high. What it enables us to do is to immerse the user, simulate for the user a workshop environment. So you can imagine if this was the kitchen, the problem that we had with the kitchen, with having objects that were the trigger. Here, the student's already within that environment. You can overlay then your HTML over the objects, which then act as, these projections then have an action, and according to what they are depends on the action that they give. So this one here says safety video. If a student touched on that, up would come a video on how to use the drill press safely. These say close-ups, so that would bring the wiring diagram up closer. Same with the trolley. So, that's great. Just flip across. I haven't tested. AR doesn't work that great in artificial lighting, particularly these sort of types of lights. We'll see how we go. So, just go over. You can see here, is that presenting all right? Yep. So, there's three options there for the student. So this is the cabling student, or the telecommunications student. So they've gone over to their fridge magnet, and they've got three options: cabling, networking, or enter the workshop. There's a survey monkey down the bottom too. That was just to get some feedback. It's still ongoing, so we're still pulling in data. So if I go to the cabling, Alex. You can see that now I no longer need to have it in front of the magnet. I now have the web page. So I can go to 611 socket, and there's the wiring diagram. Makes sense to them. It just looks like blocks to me. You can test it out for yourself. I brought a whole stack of magnets, so at the end of this you can take the magnets away and have a play. If I just leave that content again. Go over to here. I'm going to go to Enter Workshop this time, just to show you that it is possible. Just loading the content. Okay, so now I'm in the workshop. Okay, and you can see, it's just calibrating. It takes a little while. So the user will just navigate around. So this could be any context. Okay, it doesn't have to be a workshop. It could be step-by-step procedure in a process that you stitch images together, and the person would sort of go through the timeline this way. It doesn't have to be a fixed location or an environment like that. Okay, so this is just a simple video that a teacher has put together for me on drill press safety. Covers the key elements that they have to be aware of when they're using a drill press. The great thing about this is we have a resource now that we can use in multiple ways. Drill presses are used extensively in our institute for different courses. Okay, so from the student testing we discovered a few things. The students, all the students, because it's such an emerging technology, it's new to them, it's new to a lot of people, we had to have a how-to session. I offered them a video and a little handout, and that was sufficient for most of them to get the gist of it, to get going. Just a few I had to help one-on-one. Android phones. Really hard to accommodate all Android phones. Unlike iOS devices where you know operating system types and hardware types, Android phones have so many variations. Very hard to have a consistent user experience. This is what we found. You can get your $35 Android from Coles, or you can have your high-spec S3 from Samsung. Totally different phones. So that was really hard. Also, at our institute, and maybe some others, we have authentication, so that means we have a proxy, which means that Android devices can only view the internet through their browser and access emails and calendar. All the apps, they can't get through. Okay, so that was a real issue. In those cases, the students who had Android phones had to use their own data. The remote students loved the idea of getting the printed material, scanning it, having that additional content. They thought it was wonderful. They had the old way before. This was just one unit they were studying, but they were existing students. And the electrotech students too liked being able, after the lesson, get their phone out, watch those videos again as to what they may have covered before. Okay, what's coming next? Okay, geomeshing is coming. It's going to be available later this year, which at the moment we can walk into an area and we can be prompted for AR content can be presented to us on our device. That's nothing new. Geomeshing involves location and image. So I might have an OH&S poster at my workplace that I scan and I get some content up. I might use that same poster over in Adelaide. The person who scans that same poster will be presented with different information. The same poster, different information because it's based on where they're located. So geomeshing, very interesting. AR widgets are coming, so the content that you saw me view then on my device will be able to be embedded into web pages. So if you have an LMS like Moodle or whatever, you can then plonk your static AR content into a website. So say for example that panorama, you wanted to use that, you'd made that lovely resource, you wanted to have it available to you, sit down in front of the computer type students, you'll soon be able to do that. Augmented web is coming. AR web standards as a result, which means we'll no longer need, for those that comply, we'll no longer need specific apps that access. So you saw for a moment there I was using the app Geneo to access the content, which is what you'll need to use to access the content from the magnet. Eventually you'll just be able to turn your browser on and scan it, okay? Which is going to be fantastic because there's so many AR platforms out there at the moment. All those that comply with the new standards, they'll all be accessible. You won't have to choose. And of course, we're all aware, I'm sure, of the wearable technology. These platforms, don't be spooked out by wearable technology like Google Glass or anything like that. It's just another device. Platforms like this will work just as they do from the mobile device, we're being told. And there's some other options there. The Vuzix is a device that hooks onto your ear, goes around to the front of you. It's not actually glasses, and the Limus is like a dual screen, which looks a bit weird. They've sort of got multiple desktops. But yeah. Any questions? Sorry, rush through it like that. If you're going to preview this for yourself, come and grab a magnet. Install the app Geneo on your device, Android or iOS. And the project you're looking for is NBN ready. Okay? Yeah, that's it.